Imagine someone tells you they have this priceless, high-performance sports car parked in their private garage.
Like a Ferrari or something.
Right, exactly. Naturally, you'd say, well, prove it. Let me see it.
Of course.
You want to walk into that physical garage, run your hand along the physical hood and actually hear the physical engine roar.
You want tangible proof.
Right. And if you open the door and there is nothing but empty space, well, you're going to assume the car doesn't exist.
Obviously, yeah.
So today, we're exploring what happens when we apply that exact same expectation to, well, the creator of the universe.
Which is a huge leap.
It really is. We are looking at a deeply thought-provoking essay by Mark Bates titled The Divine Mystery, Understanding God's Hiddenness and Relational Mercy.
It's a fantastic piece.
It is, and Bates draws on thinkers like Josh and Sean McDowell, Walter C. Kaiser Jr., and Michael S. Heiser to tackle this massive existential question.
The big one.
Yeah, why is God hidden? I mean, have you ever prayed for a sign, asked for just a little bit of proof, and heard nothing but crickets?
I think everyone has at some point.
Right. So what does this all mean? Today, in this deep dive, we are going to completely reframe that silence.
And, it is a really profound question because our modern expectations basically set us up to be deeply frustrated by that silence.
How so?
Well, we live in this highly scientific post-Enlightenment world, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have been trained, and very effectively, to expect truth to be something we can verify in a laboratory.
We want the data.
Exactly. We want empirical data.
Yeah.
We want variables we can isolate. And what's fascinating here is that philosophers of religion have actually formalized this exact frustration.
Oh, like as an official argument?
Yeah. J.L. Schellenberg is really famous for championing what is known as the argument from divine hiddenness.
Okay, what's the basic premise there?
The premise is pretty straightforward, honestly. Yeah. It claims that if a perfectly loving, all-powerful God existed, he would make himself blindingly obvious to everyone.
Like undeniable.
Right. There wouldn't be any room for a sincere person to, look for him and fail to find him.
That makes logical sense on the surface.
It does. For many skeptics, the sheer fact that God is invisible is logical proof that he simply isn't there.
Right. The logic is, well, if he loved us, he'd show up and wave hello, he'd leave a physical footprint.
Exactly.
But reading through these sources, I realized that applying our sports car logic to this concept is a fundamental flaw. I mean, we are demanding physical evidence of a non-physical reality.
It just doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. Think about like a brilliant painter creating a masterpiece. It would be entirely absurd to demand that the artist physically exists inside the brushstrokes of their own painting.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You can't ask the creator to fit inside his creation. The canvas can reveal the artist's style, sure, but you aren't going to find their physical heartbeat hidden under, the cadmium red paint.
Right, and that paints a very clear picture of what philosophers actually call a category mistake.
Category mistake.
Yeah, we are basically using the wrong tools for the wrong category of reality.
Yeah.
When we talk about the nature of God in Christian theology, we are dealing with a distinct ontological reality.
Meaning what, exactly?
Meaning the very nature of his being is just fundamentally different from ours.
Yeah.
God is not just a highly advanced, powerful entity made of matter or some finite energy field located somewhere out in the cosmos.
He's not just a really big alien.
Exactly. In the Gospel of John, Jesus explicitly states that God is infinite spirit. The ancient Greek word used there is pneuma.
The pneuma.
Right.
Yeah.
Thinkers from Thomas Aquinas to, modern analytic theologians emphasize that God is being itself. He transcends space, time, and matter entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what does this mean for you, the listener, today? It means that taking empirical tools, which are exclusively designed to measure physical phenomena within our universe, and trying to measure an uncreated, non-material spirit is, well, entirely illogical.
It's setting yourself up for failure.
It is. It is like trying to measure the emotional depth of a poem using a meat thermometer.
That's hilarious, but true.
You are going to get a reading of 0, not because the poem lacks depth, but because you are using an instrument that is completely incapable of detecting it.
Right.
So when you feel frustrated by a lack of tangible proof, it is often because we are unknowingly applying this laboratory mindset to a transcendent reality.
And this framework really requires us to shift how we process silence.
Yeah.
Because if we accept that God is spirit, we have to stop looking for him as if he were an object in the room.
So what do we look for then?
We have to look at the effects, the historical interactions, and, the philosophical necessities of his nature.
Okay, but I have to push back here.
Oh, for it.
Even if God isn't physical by nature, he is defined as all-powerful, right?
Right.
So couldn't an omnipotent being just choose to manifest physically if he wanted to? Like, he could just construct a physical avatar, step down from the clouds, and stand right in front of us. Why stay hidden?
Well, he possesses the power to do so, certainly. But the sources we are looking at argue that doing so would actually be instantly lethal to humanity.
Wait, really? Lethal?
Yes, instantly.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, because this brings us to the absolute core of today's deep dive. We are shifting from the physical barrier between humanity and God to the moral barrier.
Which is a huge shift.
It is. Let's think about this in terms of energy. Looking directly at God's unshielded presence wouldn't just be like looking at a beautiful glowing light.
No, not at all.
It would be like staring directly into the thermonuclear reactions of the sun without any atmospheric protection.
It would be devastating.
Yeah, it wouldn't just be overwhelming. It would instantly blind and consume you.
We really need to understand the biblical concept of absolute holiness to see why that is the case.
Let's get into that.
So in the original languages, the Greek term is hagios, and the Hebrew is kwaidosh.
Hagios and Kwadosh.
Right. And when we hear the word holy today, we usually think of someone who is, highly moral, perhaps a bit boring, or just very polite.
Yeah, like a saintly, quiet person.
Exactly. But biblical holiness is an infinite, burning, aggressive purity. The prophet Habakkuk describes God's eyes as being too pure to even look upon evil.
Wow, too pure to even look at it.
Right. Now, we have to contrast that infinite purity with human moral corruption. The Apostle Paul famously wrote that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
We're all flawed.
We are morally compromised creatures down to our very core.
So bringing a morally compromised creature into the direct, unshielded presence of infinite holiness is basically like dropping a dry leaf into a blast furnace.
That's a great way to picture it.
The furnace isn't maliciously attacking the leaf, right? The leaf is just entirely incompatible with that environment.
It can't handle the heat.
Yeah, it is destroyed by the sheer nature of the heat.
That captures the dynamic perfectly. And the biblical encounters detailed by scholars like Heiser demonstrate this repeatedly.
Give us some examples.
Well, when finite, sinful mortals get even a minor, shielded taste of divine holiness, their reaction is never a peaceful aesthetic wonder.
It's not like, oh, how pretty.
No, it is sheer existential dread. Consider the story of Moses in the book of Exodus. Moses actually asks for undeniable proof. He says, "Please show me your glory."
He literally asked for what skeptics ask for today.
Exactly. But God's response is incredibly telling. He says, "You cannot see my face, for no one may see me and live."
Because of the blast furnace.
Right. So to protect Moses from that blast furnace of purity, God hides him in the cleft of a rock and covers him, only allowing Moses to perceive, essentially, the afterglow, or the back of his presence.
And we see the exact same reaction with the prophet Isaiah, right?
We do.
Isaiah receives a vision of Yahweh enthroned in the temple, and he doesn't pull out a notebook and say, wow, what a beautiful, majestic sight.
Not at all.
He absolutely panics. He cries out, woe is me, for I am lost. Or in some translations, I am undone.
He is terrified.
Yeah, he suddenly becomes hyper-aware of his own moral corruption. He realizes he is an unclean man standing in the presence of absolute, unshielded purity, and he expects to be vaporized on the spot.
Which brings us to the primary resolution of Schellenberg's argument from divine hiddenness.
Okay, tie it all together for us.
So what skeptics interpret as divine indifference, or God, just giving humanity the silent treatment, is actually presented in these texts as a protective veil of mercy.
Mercy, not absence.
Right. The Hebrew concept here is hest, which translates to a deep, covenantal love and mercy. God's hiddenness is actually an active restraint of his own judgment.
So he is intentionally obscuring himself so that morally compromised humans aren't consumed on the spot.
Exactly.
That completely flips the skeptical argument upside down. Hiddenness isn't a lack of love. Hiddenness is the expression of love.
It's a profound paradigm shift.
It is the necessary condition for our survival.
Oh.
He is keeping his distance to keep us alive. It really changes how you view a quiet sky. It's not empty, it's a buffer zone.
Yeah, it serves as a necessary temporary measure. It keeps humanity intact until, a permanent redemptive solution can be established to bridge that moral gap.
Okay, so his hiddenness prevents our immediate thermonuclear destruction.
Which is pretty important.
I think we can all agree that surviving is a pretty good reason for God to stay out of direct sight. But reading further into Bates's essay, There is a secondary, incredibly profound purpose for this hiddenness in our daily lives.
And it has to do with how we interact with him.
Right. It preserves our moral agency and our free will. Because, let's be honest, if God just showed up in the sky right now, floating over every major city with undeniable, booming proof of his existence, wouldn't that just solve all our doubts?
It would end the debate instantly.
Right. Wouldn't that fix the chaos of the world overnight?
It would certainly end the debate over his existence, but it would entirely destroy the possibility of a genuine relationship.
Why is that?
Philosopher Michael Rea offers a really helpful analogy here. He compares God's hiddenness to the behavior of a wise parent.
Okay, a parent.
Yeah, think about a parent teaching a child to walk or, make moral decisions. Eventually, that parent has to take a step back.
To let them learn.
Exactly. If a parent is constantly hovering, intervening in every single movement, micromanaging every single choice, the child never develops independent agency, resilience, or true character.
Right. If you are the child in that scenario, you aren't choosing to do the right thing out of a genuine love for goodness or love for your parent.
No, you're not.
You are just doing it out of forced compliance. So let's take that up to the cosmic level. If an all-powerful, infinitely holy God was constantly manifesting in the sky, undeniable and terrifying in his power, it would just be psychological coercion.
Absolutely.
You wouldn't be freely choosing to seek a relationship with him. You would be dropping to your knees out of sheer terror and self-preservation.
It would be a hostage situation, not a willing romance.
That's a powerful way to say a hostage situation.
And true love requires the freedom to reject it. If we connect this to the bigger picture, this ties deeply into ancient Hebraic epistemology.
Epistemology being the study of knowledge, right?
Right. It is simply the philosophical study of how we know what we know. The Enlightenment rationalism that shapes our modern world today, it demands total mathematical certainty about everything before we commit to it.
We want the proof in a spreadsheet.
We want the data graph to be at 100%. But the ancient Hebrew mindset embraced the reality of a permanent boundary between divine omniscience and human limits.
Moses actually articulates this boundary beautifully in the book of Deuteronomy.
Oh yeah, chapter 29.
Yes. He tells the people, the secret things belong to the Lord our God, but the things that are revealed belong to us.
It's a very different mindset.
There is a deep comfort in recognizing the limit to human understanding. True knowledge of God in this framework isn't about compiling an exhaustive mathematical database of facts.
No, it's relational.
Right. It is about faithful trust based on clues and revelations he actually has provided.
This creates a really unique threshold for belief. And the French philosopher Blaise Pascal observed this brilliantly.
What did Pascal say?
Pascal argued that God provides enough light for those who truly desire to see him, and enough obscurity to humble those who don't.
Wow, enough obscurity to humble them. I love that concept.
It's brilliant.
God's hiddenness essentially acts as a filter. It weeds out the people who are merely casually curious or those who arrogantly demand that the creator of the universe prove himself on their specific laboratory terms.
Exactly. It filters out the pride.
But at the same time, it deeply rewards those who are engaged in genuine, humble seeking. The obscurity requires us to actually lean in.
Right.
As the prophet Jeremiah wrote, "You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart." If the proof was overwhelming, intellectual assent would be mandatory and love wouldn't be a choice.
It establishes the necessary space for an uncoerced relationship. The hiddenness provides the freedom for human beings to develop their own moral compass and, willingly desire a connection with the divine rather than being bullied into submission by overwhelming evidence.
This all makes logical sense, but I have to throw a massive wrench into this framework.
Uh-oh, let's hear it.
We've established that God hides to protect us from being incinerated by his holiness, like a dry leaf in a furnace.
Yes.
And we've established he hides to preserve our free will so we aren't coerced. But God doesn't leave us completely in the dark. The essay discusses how God bridges the gap through progressive revelation.
He does.
But wait, if unshielded holiness is like staring directly into the sun, how did anyone interact with Jesus?
Ah, the Christological climax of the problem.
Exactly. According to Christian theology, Jesus is God. He was walking around, eating meals with people, touching them. Why didn't the thermonuclear holiness fry the disciples the moment they shook his hand?
That is the ultimate focal point of this entire theological structure. How do you bridge the infinite gap without destroying the finite creature?
Right. How?
The essay outlines a matrix of revelation. First, there is general revelation. The idea that God's invisible attributes can be perceived through the grandeur of the physical universe and the internal human conscience.
Like looking at the stars and feeling awe.
Right? The cosmos acts as a signpost.
Yep.
But a signpost doesn't offer redemptive reconciliation. So God layers in special revelation. His specific actions in history, the written scriptures, and the messages of the prophets.
But none of that answers the Jesus problem. If he is the creator, why didn't he consume the people around him?
Because of the specific nature of the incarnation, Josh and Sean McDowell use a wonderfully simple phrase for this. Jesus is God with skin on.
God with skin on.
Yeah. The author of Hebrews describes Jesus as the exact imprint of God's nature. The way humanity survived interacting with him is that the uncreated God accommodated himself to our severe limitations.
He stepped down to our level.
In the incarnation, Jesus veiled his transcendent glory. He wrapped that blinding, consuming holiness in frail human flesh. He stepped down into space-time history so that we could finally behold the true character of God without being vaporized.
Think about it like viewing a total solar eclipse. If you stare at the sun directly, you will permanently damage your eyes. But if you put on those specialized, dark eclipse glasses, you can look directly at the reality of the sun.
That makes perfect sense.
You are seeing its true shape and its true light, but the lethal, blinding rays are filtered out so your finite human eyes can actually take it in. The human body of Jesus acted as that necessary filter.
Use the eclipse glasses.
Yeah, he allowed humanity to see the absolute love and character of God without being destroyed by the absolute power of God.
It is a brilliant mechanism for solving the epistemological problem.
Yes.
The problem of how we can truly know God. But the texts we are analyzing stress that the incarnation was only the first half of the solution.
Only the first half. What's the second?
The life of Jesus showed us who God is, but the cross of Jesus solved the moral barrier we discussed earlier.
The blast furnace problem.
Exactly. Remember, the core issue was that unholy humans cannot survive contact with absolute holiness. According to this theology, on the cross, Jesus bore the judgment that sinful humanity's moral corruption demanded. He satisfied the requirements of divine holiness.
And the most striking historical symbol of this happens the exact moment Jesus dies. The massive, thick veil in the Jewish temple, the literal physical curtain that separated the Holy of Holies where God's presence dwelled from the rest of the world, was torn completely in half from top to bottom.
It's a huge moment in the narrative.
For centuries, that veil was the ultimate symbol of divine hiddenness and protection. It kept the blast furnace away from the dry leaves.
Yes.
So Christ tearing the veil meant the moral barrier was resolved. He finally gave unholy humans safe, redemptive access to a holy God.
And this isn't presented as some random reactionary sequence of events either. Walter C. Kaiser Jr. refers to this entire overarching narrative as God's promise plan.
Promise plan.
Yeah, it is a massive, meticulously orchestrated grand architecture of salvation history.
Let's trace that architecture because it really highlights the why behind the long wait. The hiddenness didn't just happen once. It was a slow, progressive rollout.
Very slow.
It spans all the way from the initial rupture of humanity's relationship with God in the Garden of Eden in Genesis 3. From there, God doesn't just snap his fingers and fix it. He works through long, slow covenants.
Right.
He makes promises to Abraham, then builds a framework of laws with Moses at Sinai, then establishes a lineage with David. Why take thousands of years?
Because preparation was needed.
Exactly. Because God is slowly preparing a specific people, a specific lineage, to eventually introduce the ultimate filter Jesus into the world safely.
And that progressive plan extends all the way into the New Testament.
Right, even past Jesus.
Yeah, the essay highlights Romans chapter 11, where the Apostle Paul explains how God is currently building a massive multi-ethnic family. He is grafting wild branches, meaning non-Jewish people from all over the world, into the original tree of faith.
Which includes us today.
Right. But crucially, Paul insists that God does this without ever erasing or replacing his original concrete promises to ethnic Israel. God uses seasons of hiddenness, partial spiritual hardening, and incredibly patient, progressive revelation to orchestrate a complex salvation that eventually includes the entire globe.
It really is a masterclass in divine patience. God is playing a long restorative game.
He's not in a rush.
No. He is respecting human agency, fulfilling his ancient promises to the letter, and perfectly balancing his infinite holiness with his infinite mercy. He didn't just stay hidden to abandon us. He stayed hidden to orchestrate a rescue mission that wouldn't kill the hostages in the process.
When you synthesize all of this source material, the paradigm shift is just profound.
Yeah.
Divine hiddenness is an ontological necessity because God is an infinite spirit, not a physical object we can trap in a test tube.
Right.
And morally, it is a profound act of sovereign mercy. His hiddenness shields us from a purity we cannot survive, while simultaneously creating the necessary breathing room for us to seek him freely, without the terror of coercion.
So, to you listening right now, when you experience those inevitable seasons of spiritual dryness, or you look at the world and feel like God is silent and your empirical test tube is empty, these sources offer a powerful reminder
A really important one.
that silence is not an abandonment. It is not proof of his absence. It is an invitation to deeper trust. It is the necessary space for you to choose him freely.
Exactly.
And more than that, it is a call to action. In a world where the Creator is veiled, we are called to make the invisible God visible to the people around us through our own tangible, active choices of mercy, love, and justice. We become the evidence.
This raises an important question, though, and it leaves us with something rather piercing to consider.
What's that?
The biblical narrative frequently shows humanity being alienated from God's presence because of cosmic rebellions. A prime example is the Tower of Babel, where ancient humans tried to forcefully build their own physical way up into the divine realm to make a name for themselves.
Right, they wanted to break in.
They demanded access on their own terms. We look back at that and think it is primitive. But could our modern, rigid demand for immediate, mathematical, empirical proof of God simply be a modern intellectual Tower of Babel?
Wow. Are we just building another tower, this time made out of test tubes, peer-reviewed papers, and laboratory demands?
It seems like we might be.
Are we still trying to force the creator of the universe to submit to our own terms of engagement rather than accepting the humble, mysterious invitation he actually offers?
It's definitely something to think about.
That is a deeply profound thought to end on. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep seeking, keep asking those difficult questions, and keep exploring the incredible nuances of the ideas around you. And remember, sometimes the fact that you aren't staring directly into the sun is the very thing keeping you alive. We'll catch you next time.